That was one hell of a championship clash. When you break down the notion of what a title defense actually is, championship belts and 5-round fights aside, at its core, it's one fighter, the champion, seeking to prove to the challenger, and through them all of us, that they are the top dog, that they are the single best example of an athlete within the weight class in question. Sometimes your champions do that with an absolute shutout, a win that reminds the world that there are in fact levels to this game. Often it's a quick finish, another notch on the belt of the king or queen of the division, another step towards the greater goal, one that revolves more around legacy. In the UFC 266 main event, we saw a champion in Alexander Volkanovski who was pushed to the absolute edge of his capacity to hold on to that coveted belt. And he's a fighter who has been forced to defend his status as the #1 featherweight in the world on many occasions. And not just inside the octagon, but through his relationship and rivalry with the immensely popular Max Holloway. So much so that many people, even after Saturday, still see the Hawaiian as the premier 145-pound talent in the sport. But as I watched Volkanovski in that mounted guillotine and the triangle choke that followed, as we all witnessed how he would just not accept the defeat that was just millimeters away from becoming a reality, I saw a title defense in the most compelling sense of the phrase. He took what Ortega had to offer and simply would not relent, would not give in where many others likely would have. As far as the singular moments of greatness that define a champion's legacy are concerned, Alexander Volkanovski had an almighty one last weekend, and my goodness were they impressive. Okay, I know the title of this video is a bit misleading. No, this is not a step-by-step guide designed to make you understand what you're doing wrong in your assessment of the champion. But I do think that even if you called that last razor-close fight for Holloway, if you then looked at his subsequent matchup against Calvin Kattar and thought, yeah, that's the best featherweight on the planet, what Volkanovski did on Saturday was sure to have left you impressed. Because for me, I scored both of his fights with Max in his favor. The rematch obviously being one of the closest battles round by round in UFC history. But either way, it doesn't really matter. We're simply lucky to have two insanely great featherweights together at the top at the same time. And though I'll dive further into the Holloway trilogy bout in a future video, for now let's just focus on Alexander Volkanovski and what he overcame last weekend. Because that was one incredible showcase. A fight that brought all of the subtleties of his game to the surface in a way that was completely inarguable by the time the final bell went. As most of us will know, Alex's game is built around feints, around footwork, around stifling the offense in front of him. At the elite level, we saw it first when he shut out Jose Aldo, a fighter who is still very clearly operating in the highest levels in terms of his technical proficiency. But when he got in there with Volkanovski, it almost seemed as though he had no idea what to do with him. On a side note, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads, before leaving a comment to let YouTube's algorithms know that we are fast becoming one of the best MMA channels on the platform. I've heard it said that the champion's greatest strength is mesmerizing his opponents, leaving them baffled as he feints and pivots awkwardly in front of them. It put Holloway's follow-up performance against Calvin Kattar into a greater level of perspective, where in the aftermath, while Volkanovski himself said that he was indeed impressed by the record-breaking showing, that when it comes to trying to beat him, he just doesn't allow his opponents to open up that much. And that's what he displayed wonderfully against the inhumanly tough Ortega. In the early exchanges, Alex moved constantly, pot-shotting this improved version of T-City, testing his iron chin and resilience consistently through those opening 2 rounds, before the complete and utter madness of round 3 changed everything. Ortega managed to catch a kick, firing off a counter that put Volkanovski on his back. And then, I swear I've never seen a fighter in MMA latch onto submissions quite like this guy. Within half a second, he already had a guillotine with fight-ending potential locked in, sliding perfectly into position in a manner that even Volk himself admitted post-fight had him thinking that he was about to lose his title, but he didn't. He flailed wildly like a fish out of water, eventually finding just enough space to survive, before then being caught in Ortega's signature triangle choke, which he also evaded. But even with those moments of resilience, I think this fight showed the world a bit more of what Volkanovski is all about. Over the course of the last 4 fights, his wins over Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo, and Holloway twice, the narrative has kind of been skewed in most of our minds to place his opponent as the likely winner. Originally, it was Chad Mendes' comeback. It was Jose Aldo's resurgence. He was just another contender to Holloway's throne, and in the rematch, it was Max's big chance to recapture his belt. But this time around, it was a lot clearer just how good Volkanovski was. how much of a challenge Ortega was up against, where after seeing the artistry of Max Holloway's win over Calvin Kattar, a lot of us were kind of forced to ask just how good Volkanovski must have been to be able to stand up to that. And when he wasn't fighting for his life in those submissions, he looked like an absolute world beater out there, composed under fire, with cardio for days, pop in his punches, and just a level above T-City for the most part. Ortega is certainly an elite talent, don't get me wrong, but if we did learn anything on Saturday night, it's that Alexander Volkanovski is as much of a cut above these featherweights as Max Holloway is, and for the health of the division, having a rivalry like this, where the margins are so fine, yeah, I'm pretty excited to see these guys dance again, because that second pairing in particular contained within it some of the most technically advanced MMA I've ever seen in my life. It truly was a treat, and I think that the Holloway-Kattar fight and now the Volkanovski-Ortega fight have allowed us to really put their greatness into perspective. So yeah, all credit to Brian Ortega, he certainly would have tapped 99% of fighters with that first submission, but if there was one major storyline to emerge from UFC 266, it was that Alexander Volkanovski is truly as great as his billing would suggest. But what did you make of this incredible title matchup for the featherweight strap? And who is it that you would like to see the champ in there with next? Do let us know your opinions in the comments section below. We always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.